My name is Lana Widener, and I am one of the procurement managers in the purchasing department. And today we are covering purchasing highlights, special items. So let's just get started right in with our agenda. We are going to review purchase requisitions. I think there's somebody still with their mic on. If you could turn your mic off, that would be great, because we get feedback otherwise. Thank you. 3-quote method, we'll review sole source procurement process, competitive procurement process, MBE reporting solicitations, contact us, and then our future upcoming purchasing highlights. So we're going to be doing multiple ones this year. So we just want to really hone in on purchase requisitions. Everything begins with the requisition in our department when we're talking about pre-commitments. So the requisitions are for pre-planned purchases of goods and services. If you have an invoice for goods or services already rendered, then we ask that you use the payment request, and it's also in PeopleSoft, and you'll process the invoice through that method. These are typically for goods or services less than $10,000, but there are some exceptions. So before making a commitment for something greater than $10,000, we ask that you refer to the controller's matrix and it has a complete list, but I just highlighted a few things here like royalties, honorariums, there's study abroad and subscriptions that are non-library. We will post this whole presentation, so you'll have this and you'll have all these hyperlinks that are throughout our presentation. So we've given the link here for the payment request matrix to provide some guidance should you have things that are greater than 10,000. But again, if it's not on the matrix, then prior to making a commitment, you must submit a requisition with a quote, not an invoice. That's really key, and we're really going to be focusing on looking at those requisitions. If people have invoices, we're just going to have to really take a second look at those. We ask that you, if over 10,000, that you refer to the procurement methods for documentation that are required for this for submitting a requisition. So I'm going to come in and out during our webinar a little bit, but just for those who maybe do requisitions once or twice, this may be something that you just need a little guidance. So we tell you to start a requisition, you have to get into PeopleSoft and you will click favorites, main menu, e-procurement, and then requisition. So let me just show you this and how this works, because there's some really fun things that MacStyles helped us with. And so I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to show you, we're going to add a requisition, not really, but we're going to look at one. So let's look at this requisition that I have, and I want to show you a help button that Mac has elaborated some information. So when you come in and you start typing all your data, right here, it has a purchase requisition and it has a little question mark. And when you click that, then you get all this lovely guidelines. We talk about shipping and freight. We go into the item description, price, quantity, category. These are all the things that you're going to see on the first page that you start typing your line. So you'll have the category, currency, unit of measure, due date. So all this information is here. So what we did to help you out a little bit, there's two things. The following pages, I went ahead and I just clipped that information so you'll have it in this PowerPoint. But we also provided a link to a complete training that I did for new requisitioners. It's a new presentation. So you have that, also another link in our PowerPoint. But we want to make sure that if you only do a requisition once or twice, you have a way to kind of refresh. And it's just going right there on that page. So go into purchase requisition. And then when you do the first line, you can click that little question mark. So these next few pages are what I was highlighting that are actually in PeopleSoft. So I'm not going to go through those. We just wanted you to have them. And then the other real important thing we want to make sure you know how to do once you've had a requisition put in PeopleSoft, there's a way that you actually can say, who's my buyer? Where's the payment? Has it happened? And what's happening with my requisition. So a lot of you know how to do this, but a few of you still may have questions on that. So we wanted to review this. We're encouraging that you start here first, and then if you're still struggling, then reach out to purchasing, but start here first. We do get a lot of questions like, hey, do I have a PO? Do you know where my payment is? So you can look first. So the first thing you would do is come into this page. It's main menu, e-procurement and manage requisitions. When you get to this main page, you're going to clear the button. Just click that button. Then you're going to enter your requisition, and it's 10 digits long. And then you hit the search button. So let's just do this. Let's come over here and I'll show you. So I hit the clear button. I typed in the requisition ID, and then I hit search. The next page in the PowerPoint shows you there's a little gray arrow. And when you click it on, it expands all your information. And this is one of my, okay, anybody that's had my class knows this is my favorite page. So it's because you can see all this history. You can look at your requisition. You can click on the approvals icon and see who are my approvers. Maybe that's where it is and it hasn't made it to purchasing yet. So these are the only two highlighted icons. It's either sitting in somebody's approval queue or it's sitting with us waiting for us to process. Once we process it, then we can do purchase orders. And then once you receive the goods, you'll come in and receive them. And then if at some point accounts payable then enters the invoice and a payment is processed. So anything highlighted here is a wonderful, wonderful way to see what's going on. So this particular one that I pulled up for our exercise, it has our purchase order number. It tells you the buyer is W. Ziegler Warren. And it actually says up here that there's one of two. So if I click the arrow, I can see there's a second line. And if I want to just go back to the main page, I just return. Again, we wanted to really review this so that you could see all the wealth of information that's here for you at your fingertips. So if you call us and ask us, hey, has this company peer group, because the supplier is listed here, has peer group received their payment? Well, you could click on that before you contact us or accounts payable, and you can check and see if it's done and see the number and see what date that it was actually paid. Isn't that a great tool? Like I said, this is my favorite. Okay. We also wanted to review with you a new law that went into place in 2019. It was actually in May, and it provides the state agencies to obtain 3 written quotes for purchases $10,000 to $25,000. So if you have something, say it's $12,000, it's not on state contract, it's not something exempt, you actually have to obtain a quote for them. You must send a minimum of a request to 3 or more vendors. So send it to 3 or more vendors. It cannot be a phone call. It can't be a website search. It has to be written. Really key. And I will say that when we receive requisitions, that's probably the one piece of information we're often, we miss. We don't always get that. So we're constantly coming back to you and saying, hey, can you send us where you asked in writing for a quote? And the quotes have to be apple to apple. So the next slide will provide you a blank quote in a minute, and then also a link to that. And we are updating that in the near future. So just so you know, we realize that we want to make it a little bit more user-friendly for you should you have more than one line item. So if you're sending this quote to 3 or more vendors, that's all great. It is mandatory that we have to have 3 bona fide written quotes back. So if you send it out to 5 people and you only get 3 quotes, that's great. You've met the requirement. So the quotes do have to be within 30 days of submittal to purchasing. We have seen some where they're 60 or 90 days old and we have to go back and get new quotes. And sometimes, as you know, the market prices increase. And so the quote, more than 30 days old may not be valid anymore with their pricing. So what do you do with those 3 quotes? You're going to submit the written request that you sent to the vendors. You're going to submit the 3 quotes, and they're all going to be attached to the requisition. If for any reason you're unable to obtain 3 bona fide quotes, written ones, you can submit a requisition, at least 1 quote, and ask purchasing to assist you in advertising. And we'll do that in our state's publication, which is called South Carolina Business Opportunities, or we call it an acronym of SCIBO. So this is the 3 quote request for an informal quote. And as I said, we have the link here and we'll provide that to you. And here we just ask that you fill out the date, who it's from, who it's going to, send it to them, send it in writing, requesting the information. And a lot of people do an email, but you can send it in writing, whatever format you want. This allows for the 1 line item, and so we'll be revising that to include more than 1 line item. So if for some reason, until we have it updated, you have more than 1 line, you can use more than 1 page. So you can have, line 1, 2, 3, 4. So you may have 4 pages. Again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll be reviewing those in just a few minutes. I'll take a break and look at our chat box. All right, sole sources. So this is a non-competitive method of procurement. It's used only when one supplier possesses the unique ability or capability to meet your requirement. So we put in here some of the code and regulations just so that you can have this documented, you can understand it better if you have to prepare a sole source. They are not permissible unless there's only a single supplier. Here's some examples below. So 1 would be where the compatibility of equipment, accessories, or replacement parts is the paramount consideration. I did have somebody ask me last week about one where it actually is that it's compatibility of equipment. So they were happy to hear that. And then another step, number 2 in the regulation, is where a sole supplier's item is needed for trial or use or testing. It can only be done once. If for some reason you say, oh, I love this, and you decide you want to use it a second time, it's potentially something that we may have to put out for bid. And then number 5, where the item is one of a kind. So if it's unique, so let's talk about that a little bit. Before we submit a requisition with the sole source memo, we ask that you do your market research. And that again is mandated from 2019 that we have to have that with each sole source. So before submitting the request, you should perform market research to ensure that there's only one source of supply or service or IT or construction. What happens when we receive it? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to Google and double check and make sure that there is no other supplier. So the market research provided with each request will be confirmed again by the buyer. We want you to be specific in your memo. Make sure that it gives details. It does not have to include technical specs, though. We do see that a good bit. So if you'll make sure that your memo is for the sole source need that you have, it's not necessary for us to have the technical things. If it is tied to a research, please state that in your memo. Let us know that it's a research-related purchase, and that's something that's really important when we do sole sources. And then when you get ready to do the requisition, you'll include the sole source memo, and you'll include the quote from the supplier. When we receive your requisition, and we'll review it, and if we determine that the request is not a sole source, then we will advertise and we'll move forward with that. And of course, we want to communicate that back to the person. So the person especially that has written a sole source, so that we have good communication there. So one of the things that we ask, and it's the last bullet on this page, but we ask that you, if you're the requisitioner and you're helping somebody submitting their request for a sole source, please put in comments who our contact person is. If it's one of the professors, or if it's a dean or somebody, director, that way we know who to contact and communicate with, so that they are understanding where we are in the process. All right, now I'm going to jump back to the top. If there are multiple vendors that do the same thing, please note this is not a sole source. If they are better than others, that is also not a sole source, and a brand is not a sole source. So sometimes we do see in the memo, well, this is the best one. We like it better than the other three that we looked at, but they're all still the same. So just note that those are not sole sources. So also, we've included in here what we're asking, and we've been sending this out for the last probably year and a half or two. These are 4 items that we ask that you include in your sole source memo. The first one is description of the agency need that this procurement meets. The second, description of market research. We talked about that already. So the market research agency performed to determine the availability of products or services that would meet the needs. A description of your supplies, construction, information technology, and/or services that the vendor will provide under the contract, and a justification of that need. And I want to say, to me, as I look at sole sources, this one is really, really critical. Why? Explain why no other vendor can provide that supply or construction or the IT or service, and how it meets the need of the agency. We really, as we get to that 4th one, we're really looking at that, why no other vendor. So very important. So if you'll include those in sole sources, those 4 paragraphs, if you will, at a minimum. And we ask if you can try to keep that sole source to maybe a page, the memo. That's better for us. Sometimes we've seen 4 or 5 pages, and then we're having to kind of go back and forth and having to condense that. So if you can keep your department sole source memo to 1 page, that would be good. Then you'll submit a signed sole source memo with a rec and a quote, and the approved requisitions go to the buyer. And all those things will help us so that we're not having to go back and forth asking questions. And we want to try to help you get a sole source done as quickly as possible. And if we have to keep coming back and forth, obviously that takes more time. And so we want to make sure that we can meet your needs. And I mentioned the last point already. If you'll let us know who the contact person is in your requisition, that would be helpful. All right, just a little bit more on sole sources. If we have a sole source that's greater than 50,000 but less than 250, we have to post a notice in our South Carolina Business Opportunities publication to say, hey, we have this sole source with this vendor. Here's a description, and here's how much money. We provide that information so that if there is a vendor out there that sees it and says, hey, I can do this, then we'll stop and review what they have. But also, sometimes it's just to tell us, we can't do that, but we can offer this. So it's maybe sometimes just giving us another vendor for future work of some type that we might have in our needs here at the university. If it is greater than 250,000, we have to post in Skibo for 10 days, for 10 days. So greater than 250,000 is for 10 days. And these are business days. So that does not include weekends or holidays. So I know I may have questions on this one, and I'll stop in a minute and take a look. All right, before any contracts are finalized or sent to the Office of General Counsel, it's imperative that the method of procurement is determined. We know that the contract approval form includes a little statement. So I boxed it over here on the right. It says USC Purchasing Office has been consulted regarding the purchase of goods and services being acquired and has confirmed that all applicable procurement rules and regulations have been followed. We ask that you submit your requisition with your sole source memo and a quote before sending the quote or agreement to the Office of General Counsel. That's how we can review. That's the consultation that you'll receive. So that is if the sole source requires legal review. We ask again that you submit the requisition. We're asking for that because sometimes we get an email or we get phone calls and we hear, hey, can you tell me if this is a sole source? And if it's okay, we want you to document, and we want the documentation so we're clear and we understand exactly what it is that you're requesting for a purchase. So if it requires legal approval, legal review, and you're completing the contract approval form, It means that prior to submitting to the Office of General Counsel, you're to submit that requisition with a copy of the quote or contract. That's critical. We're noticing that sometimes it's happening after the fact. So we wanted to really focus on here that this needs to be done before going to the Office of General Counsel. So in summary, for sole sources, it is we're only one source of supply, services, information technology, or construction. We talked about the 4 areas that we asked that you would include in your sole source memo and some examples. So where the compatibility of equipment, accessory, or replacement parts is paramount. I mentioned earlier that we have, let me grab one thing really quick. Get to my little example here. Apologize. So in our sole sources for either a supplier need for testing or one of a kind. So for the one of a kind, there are occasions we have scientific equipment that is being used for research. That could potentially be a sole source. For compatibility, there are sometimes we currently have a piece of equipment on campus and an additional piece is being purchased for that equipment. And so it would be compatible to the equipment we currently have. So those are just some simple examples of that. And again, for just a summary, we have to post in Skibo for 5 business days between 50 and 250,000 and 10 business days for potential value greater than 250. All right, Venus, I know you have your hand up.
Hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make a comment that since I am the ultimate approving authority for sole sources, I wanted to comment on the fact that you made a statement about the fact that we really only need 1 page, usually for the justification for a sole source. And what happens is if you try to include too many pages, I think a lot of times people think the more you say about a subject, the better it is. When actually, when it comes to a sole source, if you start giving us too much information, it looks like you're writing bid specifications. And so then you start giving us information so that it looks like we're able to get competition for an item. So if something's truly a sole source, you should be able to articulate that within 2 to 3 paragraphs, so to speak. And so that's what we're looking for in purchasing when we're trying to determine whether or not something's truly a sole source. And as far as the contractual, the contract being signed, I'm getting a little concerned because I'm actually hearing some people say, well, I'm being told that the contract has to be signed before we send the requisition to purchasing. And that's disturbing to me because it means that you're entering into a contractual relationship without knowing how it's actually going to be purchased. And in the real world, suppose you have something that's available from more than one source, but you've entered into a contract with someone to buy something, but by the time you get to purchasing, the requisition gets to purchasing, you've already entered into that contract, but purchasing says it's available from more than one vendor. Well, you're in a very unfortunate position at that time because you've got a contract with a vendor, but purchasing says you can't just get it from that vendor. So that's why you have to be careful about sending those contracts to the legal department before knowing how you're going to procure those. So that's why it's important to know the method of procurement before you send that contract to the legal department. And that's all I have to say on the matter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Venus. We do have a couple of questions, so I just wanted to, I'll go ahead and review those and respond to them. So can we define market research? And yes, it's conducting an online search on a particular topic, and making note of the most recent data published in that topic. That's kind of the, I guess, definition from our website. But it can be that you have contacted other, universities and said, hey, who have you used? And they have 3 or 4 vendors. Well, then it's not a sole source. But if they've only used one and you check them out and you're like, oh, well, I have a different one that I'm using or I want to use. So again, if there are 2 different ones, it's not a sole source. Oftentimes people will Google and just to research to see if there's anybody there. So just going out there, talking, asking purchasing, hey, do you know of any other vendors? Anything that you can research and try to find. But it's just a matter of researching to see if there's any other vendors to provide that sort of supply or service. And then there was another question Jessica asked, do I need to do a sole source if the person or the vendor is on state contract, or do I need to do the 3-quote method if they're on state contract? The answer is no, because the state contract is a contract that's already been implemented by the state, and it already has received, it's already been vetted and gone through the process, has a contract in place. And so we use that first, actually. So state contract supersedes. So we definitely want to go with that. So hopefully that answers your question. Second, let's see, another question was, how do we know when we need the legal department? If you receive a quote that has terms and conditions, they may need to review that. So either you ask them to remove those terms and conditions. If they're insistent on those, then it'll have to go to the legal department. We do not sign quotes. Nobody does. It definitely has to go through legal for anybody to sign. So anything like that, quote or agreement.
Let me add something to that, Lana.
Yep.
There's a university policy, I believe it's BTRU 1.04, that actually talks about who's authorized to sign documents on behalf of the university. So the purchasing department is able to sign procurement documents, bid documents, intent to awards, purchase orders. Anything extraneous to a procurement document that requires an authorized signature on behalf of the university would require a contract approval form and would have to be sent to the legal department for the appropriate approval.
Hopefully that answers.
Yeah, you have to be very careful, because if there's anything that's going to obligate the university and it's not a procurement document, you'd have to send that through our legal department. And generally, if you contact purchasing, we'll be able to assist you in determining that. And as far as the state contract items that Lana was referencing, those items have already been through a procurement process before they're actually added to the state contract. And so that's the reason why you don't have to go through an additional procurement process when you use them.
Thank you. Another question, sole source. What if we need to purchase training or service plans on a product we already have and it is over $10,000? Seems like we shouldn't have to do a sole source because only the company we bought it from can provide us with those service needs. Or what if we need to purchase equipment to add to an existing lab setup and it all needs to be from the same company in order for it all to work together? Well, the good news is you get to do a sole source. But that would be part of that justification, right? You're in your sole source memo, you would say it's compatible with this piece of equipment or service. We currently have this in place. It's a renewal of the whatever term, renewal of that service. So yes, we would do a sole source. If it's not on contract, state contract, and we're talking truly about a sole source that you currently have. of the item that you currently have. Did that answer your question? And if not, just let me know. So Barbara's asking, what all happens on our end, purchasing, when a sole source is submitted? What levels review this? Approximately how, okay, Barbara. Approximately how long would this normally take? I think it's helpful to know that all you have to go through each time that one is submitted, especially so that we can explain to our faculty why this takes longer than a normal requisition. So I hope that we answered some of that already. So some of it is depending on the dollar amount. If the sole source memo has this great 4-item description and it's, clear and concise, that's helpful. If it, so to answer your question, sometimes, and I love that you actually asked this, sometimes when I get a question like, hey, where's my requisition? Can you tell me the status of it? I go, hey, let's go back to manage requisitions and click the approvals icon. Has it been assigned to a purchasing buyer yet? Or is it still in one of your approvers' queues to be approved? So if it's still in their queue, we haven't even got it yet. Okay, so that's one thing to definitely look at. So once a buyer receives it, we've been asked to prioritize that and to at least review it and start looking at it, see if it, and determining if it is truly a sole source. If it is a true sole source and it's greater than 50,000, then the buyer's got to review it to get it into the South Carolina business opportunities for those number of days, depending on the dollar amount. The other part is we asked just in this presentation earlier, please let us know who is that professor or that teacher or that research person so that we can communicate with them. I don't want to take you necessarily out of the loop, Barbara, but sometimes we need to ask some technical questions so that we can understand, because this is their world and our world is purchasing and procurement. So we want to make sure that when we do write our justification for a sole source, so once we get it, we also have to write a justification as a buyer. And sometimes that takes a little bit of work and a little homework. And we do our market research and double check everything out. Once we do that, we submit it to our staff to review. And then after everybody's happy, then we submit it to Venus. As she said, she's the final approval. And everybody has their own schedule, so we can't guarantee how long does it take, because somebody may be out of the office for the day, or they may be in meetings or conferences. So we don't give like, oh, it'll be done in 2 days or it'll be done in 10 days, but we try to meet the need. If you're having a problem, also on Manage Rec, if you click the icon, you can see who the buyer or the approval, go back to the approval. If you click that drop down and look at the approval or the icon, click it, and you can communicate directly with the buyer and just ask them, hey, how's it going? Do you have questions? I know you've had it for, a week and just wondered because it's only, $28,000. So I know it didn't have to go in SCIBA. So just wondered what your schedule is to maybe see this one get through, because, my people are asking. I hope that helps a little bit. All right. Can business managers or department chairs sign quotes for small amounts? So hopefully we answered that earlier. No. If a quote has to be signed, it needs to go through legal. Okay. You guys have some great questions. Thanks. And Venus, thank you for helping. All right, sole source is a really important part. And like I said, we've been asked, and through Venus and Clarissa, to make sure as buyers that we make this a priority, because we know that a lot of them are tied to research and very important, and we want to help. So we do have a timeline on some things here for you. It's called a competitive procurement process, and it's a matrix. And it's a guideline. It's not something you can hold blood on us or take our first child, but anything up to $49.99.99. If the P card is allowable, we ask that you use the P card. It is inclusive of tax and shipping. So please note that we encourage you, if we see a requisition, Andrea and Edna are our administrative support staff that help assign those to requisitions to the buyers. And if they see something less than 5,000, they're taking a second look at that, and they may be pushing it back to you and saying, hey, use your P card. So be sure to review that before you submit a requisition. Up to $5,000 if the P card cannot be used, or if the vendor is saying, hey, I must have a purchase order, but that it won't exceed $10,000, then the total commitment to be paid, again, is less than 10, a vendor invoice to the university, then we want you to use the payment request. So if they give you an invoice, use payment request. If it's something where they need the purchase order, then complete the purchase requisition in PeopleSoft and attach at least one written quote. Of course, that's all we really need. And then we will, with a one quote, we'll determine if it's fair and reasonable, or you can say that, basically you did your part. Put it in comments that you said this is fair and reasonable. That's fine too. The lead time on those is 1 to 3 days. So anything under 10,000 where the payment request is not a valid method for you and a purchase order is needed, then it's 1 to 3 days for us to process. Every now and then, people now are learning how to see who the buyer is by looking at the approval icon, and we'll get a email to the buyer. So I got this one yesterday that they said, hey, Lana, I see that you got assigned this requisition. Can you please process the PO today? And I was like, I hadn't even seen that I got it because I was working on another project, and I was like, oh, I got that purchase requisition. And so please allow us a little time, to at least review the requisitions and to be able to make sure they're meeting the procurement process and procurement methods. All right, so I'm not going to go through each one, but just to show a little bit, over 10,000 and up to 20, we could do the 3-quote method. Over 10 up to 25, again, if the end user isn't able to obtain the 3 bona fide quotes, we can help you with that. And then over 25 and up to 100, there is also our process of putting something out to bid. Written request and advertisement at Skibo is part of the process. You'll complete a requisition, and you'll use the supplier name to be bid by USC Purchasing. And you'll leave that quantity open, quantity of 1. So we may use for our method, there's several type of procurement methods that sealed bid, best value, request for proposal. Solicitations awarded over 50 are subject to protest. So the vendor could protest those, which could result in delays. And then 100,000 up to 3 million. Our university procurement level is $3 million. So there is a formal solicitation process as well. And this also is advertised in Skibo. And you'll again complete a requisition, and you'll use the supplier to be bid by USC Purchasing. These cover sealed bids, best value bids, fixed price bids, or request for proposals. I'm not going to go into what all that means, but we just wanted to kind of show you that there are some timelines that we have, and it's actually on our website. But also you'll have a copy of this PowerPoint, and I'll add this into our chat at the end of our meeting. And then over 3 million, we will have to contact the state Fiscal Accountability Office. They oversee our procurement and oversee the state's procurement. So we'll complete a requisition again. You would complete the rec and add your specifications. Anytime you have a to be bid project or requisition, we definitely need your specifications. And we do prefer them in Word so that if we need to take any of that information and we can populate it into the actual bid, we'll do that, the bid document. So that is our competitive procurement process. I've given the link to our purchasing website. You'll have that later, but that is some good information we wanted to share with you. All right, so another area is our small minority women-owned business. So the policy statement was adopted in 1981 by the USC Board of Trustees. The University of South Carolina believes that it is in the state's best interest for minority businesses to fully participate in all phases of the procurement process. The University of South Carolina will utilize its best efforts towards assisting minority businesses with the state's policies and programs, which are designed to promote balanced economic and community growth throughout the state. I know you can read this, but I'm wanting to really hone in and emphasize this. It was adopted by the Board of Trustees in '81. That's over 40 years ago. So again, the University of South Carolina wishes to ensure that those businesses owned and operated by minorities are offered the opportunity to fully participate in the overall procurement process of the state. Efforts will be directed towards establishing procedures designed to result in awarding contracts and subcontracts to minority businesses in order to enhance minority capital ownership, overall state economic development, and reduce dependency on the part of minorities. And then our president came in, he actually came to a outsourced strategic meeting that we had in 2022. And one of the statements he has made, I'm not sure if he made it there, then I apologize. He said, in an effort to make our business interactions more reflective of our community diversity, the university is engaging in outreach and education about how to be more inclusive. We hope to help new and developing businesses gain access and insight into our community and our state procurement system and increase their opportunities to do business with the university. I have to say that we do get a lot of people, a lot of contacts asking, how do I get in your system? How do I do business with you? And so we do have on our homepage, so I'm going to go there and let me just show you where it is. And because I think it's really cool that we have this dedicated area. So if you're on our purchasing site homepage, let me blow that up a little bit. Right on the left-hand side, we have our little, icon stuff, our little list. We go to small and minority businesses. And here we have a directory. We have a directory registration. And then we have additional information about South Carolina Division of Small Minority Business Contracting and Certification. We have record of business solicitation. And that's what I want to focus on right now. So if you are getting one quote or you're getting 10 quotes, we ask that you record your solicitation effort to reaching out to small minority businesses. So I'm going to show you in a minute how I do that, but what I want to really focus on is that back to this message. We hope to help new and developing businesses gain access and insight to our community. We want to increase their opportunities. And the only way for us to really document and show to our president that we are doing that we are actually increasing our opportunities, that we are actually reaching out because he asked us to, and the board encouraged us to for over 40 years ago, but we have to track it. We do have to do some, little bit of tracking. So in order to do that, we developed a record of business solicitation. And this lovely page is where we track. And we actually have a recording from Abby Vaughn, one of our procurement managers or officers from Beaufort, from this, from a recording that she did in 2022. And I have a link in our PowerPoint to her, the short version of how this works. So if you don't remember it all today, you'll have her link. And then I also have the link to the full course that we taught about and covered in a webinar. Okay, so I have set up, I'm in a division. They tell me that I'm in the administrative and finance division. So I'm just gonna click that. But if you notice, there are all choices here. So you can pick the appropriate one for your area. And then you do need to know, and if you do requisitions, you should know your information here. So I'm putting in our operating unit and our department number, which I have. And then who am I? So I'm in purchasing. And you noticed it defaulted to my name when I opened it up. It should default to yours when you open it up. So for right now, I'm just going to put purchasing department. We have a little bit more of an official name. Goods and services requested. So I did a t-shirt screening. So I'm just going to come down and I'm going to search through all these different things. I'm going to go to screening. And it is in here. There's screen printing. My business, I reached out to about 10 and businesses, and some were suppliers in the system and some weren't in the system. And so this particular one is not in the system. So at the very bottom of all these business names, there's another link that says other. So when I clicked other on, they just asked me to type in what was the name of that other vendor. And this one. And were they awarded? This one was awarded. And the award amount. I would enter that there and had hit submit. Let me add one other. I don't have the award amount in front of me, so I don't want to do that one wrong. So I'm going to put this one in. And this particular vendor is here. So I'm going to go to the top. Go back to the top here. If I'm at select one and I start typing their name, and it's WIER. And I have to scroll to find them. Oh, our supplier people don't have them in. So we'll just do it. We'll type it in other. They show as a supplier in our other modules, so I apologize. So Weir Stewart. They did not get awarded, so I'm going to say no. What reason? Why were they not awarded? And there, it was not one of these reasons. It was the low quote was awarded to another vendor. So I completed all this information. When I submit it, it comes up with this solicitation was submitted successfully. You can now enter another one. By entering another one, this is already defaulted at the top. I don't have to type all that again. I just come back down here and I select the appropriate person or type in the vendor name. So when submitting the rec, you come in here, fill the blanks in. You can log your information by going to the following link. So we have that link for you. And then complete the information. You click the submit button, and then you're logged successfully. We want you to do this for P-card purchases and for one quote, anything under 10,000. And if you're doing a 3-quote method, you could do it for that. If we're doing it for solicitations, and if we're helping with the 3-quote method, we'll do it also for that. So reporting solicitations. So how far back can we go? And I'm going to see if Clarissa might know, or Mac, I know might be on the call. Do you know how far back we can go to record reporting our record of business solicitation? I'm not sure if anybody knows. I'm thinking, yeah.
There is no date on that form, so if we want to put a date on there, we can certainly add it, but there's no limit. You go back whenever you made the attempt. This is all just a record of your efforts in obtaining business with an MBE supplier. So
Great.
I don't know. It's up to Clarissa or Venus.
Okay, so for right now, anything can go. So thank you. Thank you, Mac. Yeah, and Kim pointed out, it is a record of attempted solicitations, any attempt. So that's why I wanted to show you. If you notice, there was one I sent out, like I said, to 10. There was only 5 that responded to my bid, and there was one that was awarded, but I still listed all 10. So that way it showed that I made an effort to reach out to these small minority businesses. All right, and then I mentioned, so we have for you Abby Vaughn's purchase manager. You just be her little link, and this is a Teams link, but it goes right to her information. And then the strategic supplier outreach presentation that was also done, I believe, in October of 2022. We have that here for you as well. All right, so we're getting toward the end. I'm going to stop for a second. Do we have any other additional questions? I have Venus and Clarissa and Mac and Kim. All our buyers are on the phone. So any questions for anybody? All right, let me keep going. If you have them, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I know, I can't hear. So I'm being asked about a change order, and that's a different thing that I'm going to be doing. So I will mention that I'm working on some small video clips, one for Manage Rec and one for change orders. So thank you for the question, though. Yeah. So I guess I should have said, do you have any questions about what we're talking about today? All right. So we want to make sure that you know how to reach us. Some of you have quick dial for a couple of the buyers, but you can always email purchase email box. We have a couple of staff monitoring the mailbox, and if it is associated to closing a purchase order, you definitely email the purchase email box. You don't have to email the buyer. And if you just have general inquiries, you don't have to email or you don't have to copy the buyer. So a couple of times I've seen recently where I might get copied and the purchase email box it's sending to purchase email box. Please, if it's just a purchasing question, just send to them. If it's mine and it's about my work that I'm working with you on, then you can email me directly. So you don't have to email the purchasing box if it's an indirect business with that particular buyer or a particular purchase order with a buyer. Okay, and then we do have for you just also the purchasing main line phone number. And again, our mailbox, we have Consolidated Services, which works with us and a part of our team. And then if you want to see who's on staff on the purchasing website, we have our names and phone numbers there as well. So a couple of more questions popped up. How do you amend a purchase requisition? Again, that's about a change order. So I will be happy to talk about that on a different call if you'd like. And then if I forgot to add 2 quotes to the requisition, yeah, I'll be happy to help you after the call. More than happy. So that's part of a change order type thing too. All right, I'm glad to know change orders are important. We do have some future purchasing highlights coming up, March, May, August, and October. In May, we definitely will cover year-end stuff like we normally do, but look, we'll add other things. It's not all about year-end. So we look forward to having you in these other webinars as we go through the year, and hope that this has been helpful to you and that it's something that will be used. Again, I'll drop the PowerPoint in the chat box here when we're done. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat box or email our purchase email box. Glad you could be here today and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.